Jeremiah 10:3-4 seems to explicitly condemn the tradition of decorating a tree in your home. It actually says the customs of the pagan nations are vanity. A tree from the forest is cut down and worked with an axe by the hands of a craftsman. They decorate it with silver and gold, and they fasten it with hammer and nails so that it cannot move. Is this passage explicitly condemning the Christmas tradition of decorating a Christmas tree in your home? Well, there are several key ideas in this passage you cannot miss if you really want to understand what it's saying. Then you'll see how all of this fits into Christmas. Let's jump into the scriptures to see what God's word really says. All right, Jeremiah chapter 10, starting in verse 1. The Lord is speaking to the house of Israel. Take note of that. Hear the word that the Lord speaks to you, O house of Israel. Who's speaking? The Lord. Who's he speaking to? House of Israel. Through who? The prophet Jeremiah. Thus says the Lord. What does he say? Learn not the way of the nations. What is this way of the nations that God is telling the prophet Jeremiah to tell the people of Israel not to imitate? What way in particular? Most people, when they try and justify this condemnation of certain Christmas traditions, like decorating trees and bringing it into the home, they skip this portion right here and run for verse 3. And I wonder why. Maybe because it doesn't fit the narrative. Look at what it says. Learn not the way of the nations, nor be dismayed at the signs of the heavens, which speaks to a kind of terror and awe, a kind of shock, kind of fear. I'm afraid of the signs of the heavens. Whatever the way of the nations is, it involves being dismayed at what Jeremiah says are the signs of the heavens, and verse 13 will tell us what that really is. Okay, here's why. Because the nations are dismayed at them. So God says, don't imitate the nations. Why? Because the nations are dismayed at the signs of the heavens. So whatever we're about to read in verse 3 and on, it relates to the nations having a kind of fear, awe, shock, maybe even a kind of reverence for whatever the signs of the heavens are. The ways of the nations, don't imitate them, O house of Israel. Okay? For the customs of the peoples are vanity, useless. They profit no one anything. They are vain. They profit no one a thing. Their customs of these nations who are dismayed at the signs of the heavens are vain. And we're about to explore the customs of this people, reading on, that is rooted in and connected to being dismayed at the signs of the heavens. You're going to see where this is going when you understand context. So these customs involve a tree from the forest is cut down and worked with an axe by the hands of a craftsman. So let's note the different components of this specific custom that Jeremiah is told by God to tell Israel not to do or engage in. There's a tree, it's cut down. It's worked with an axe by the hands of a craftsman. All these different components begin to give you a flavor of what it is that God is specifically condemning in this passage to a specific people about a specific thing. Okay? Verse 3. This involves a craftsman taking an axe, working a piece of wood that has been cut down from the forest, and he's working it, shaping it, and molding it into something. Verse 4 will explain what this working process looks like, because people typically skip this. The idea of a craftsman working it into something, and they go straight to the idea of you're bringing a tree into your home, decorating it, pagan idolatry, sorcery, get it out of here. Verse 4 says they decorate it. So what is the customs of these people that are vain involve? Decorating whatever is worked by the hands of a craftsman with an axe. So they're decorating it. What are they specifically decorating the trees with? Gold and silver. Why? Verse 3 tells us that whatever the custom is of these people, it involves cutting down a tree, not a specific kind of tree. And they decorate the tree with silver and gold specifically, and precious metals are usually involved in that culture, especially in this day. Precious metals are involved in pagan idolatry and worship of idols, and there's a spiritual element, an offering of sorts that they're doing. That's what's happening here, and I'll show you why. They fasten it with hammers and nails, or singular, hammer and nails. So what does it mean for a craftsman to work this piece of wood into something? Well, they're fastening it with hammers and nails, And here's, I think, the key phrase of all of this. So that it cannot move. Why does that matter? As part of Jeremiah's word, as part of Jeremiah's point, why does this matter? Because it's emphasizing the fact that what they're doing with this is turning it into an idol that profits people nothing, that doesn't exist, is useless, can't move, can't talk, can't speak, can't think, can't do anything. So they lock this piece of wood in place, not a tree in its current form in the forest, cut it down, shape it, decorate it. This is specifically idolatry of the nations. They lock the tree in place, emphasis on its inability to move. And verse 5 says their idols are like scarecrows in a cucumber field. So the question is, how do you know we're talking about them fashioning it into an idol? Because of the fact that Jeremiah in verse 5 begins talking about the idols that he's been talking about here in verse 4, 3. The customs of the people are what? Idolatry. They take a piece of wood, shape it into an idol, and worship it as their God. God is condemning idolatry. They cannot speak. Remember how I said this phrase right here? The focus of this chapter seems to be on the idea that idols can't move, speak, do anything, profit people anything. They cannot speak. They have to be carried. They're helpless. They're useless. They're incapable of walking. Don't be afraid of them. When is the last time in this chapter we saw the concept of the nations being afraid, dismayed at something? The signs of the heavens. So is this idea of not being afraid of these idols connected to what the pagan nations are dismayed about, being the signs in the heavens, which I believe verse 13 speaks to? And then verse 6 and on, it talks about there is none like you, O Lord. Why are we breaking out into praise and worship and extolling God, exalting him as the only true holy creator of the cosmos? Why are we talking about God being set apart? Look at the emphasis on God. There's none like you. You are great. Your name is great in might. Who would not fear you, O King of the nations? So we see all these ideas collide in this worship and praise. The idea of where fear should be properly placed. The nations have fear that is misplaced. It's misappropriated fear. But Jeremiah is calling the people of Israel to be different. We should be truly fearing with reverence, respect, awe. We should be fearing the one who is the king of the nations. And these nations are too busy worshiping idols, creating their own idols, being dismayed at the signs of the heavens, that they're not paying proper regard and reverence to the one who is the king of the nations, the one they should be fearing, which sounds like Jesus, saying, don't be afraid of man who can kill the body and that's it. Be afraid of him who can actually destroy both body and soul in hell. For this is your due. For among all the wise ones of the nations, emphasis on what again? The nations. Don't be like them. Be different from the nations, because God is different than any other God. And in all their kingdoms, there is none like you. Why? Why this emphasis on God being holy, God being different, God being distinct, God being sacred and set apart and sanctified? Because idols are stupid and foolish. The people who worship them are stupid and foolish. And the instruction of idols is but wood. So this chapter opened up with a kind of pagan practice, turning wood, God's creation, into an idol and bowing down and worshiping that, decorating it with an eye towards worshiping and revering that, which involves a kind of dismay at the heavens. Now, we could read this passage on and on. It just goes on about the greatness of God. The emphasis is on God versus the idols. God is great. He's everything. He's creator. He's holy. He's to be feared. The idols are nothing. Don't imitate the nations that worship idols. Okay? Because God is true king and creator. You go to verse 13. When he utters his voice, there's a tumult of waters in the what? In the heavens. Verse 1 opened up with, verse 2 rather, not being dismayed at the signs of the heavens like the pagan nations are. He makes the mist rise from the ends of the earth. He makes lightning for the rain. He brings forth his wind from his storehouses. You know who doesn't do that? Idols. No matter how much you try and make believe idols do that, they don't. So God is condemning idol worship, and the practice is described in verse 3 through 5. 7 questions to think about. Is God condemning the practice of cutting down trees? No. Is God condemning the practice of decorating things? No. Is God condemning cutting down a specific kind of tree? No. Is God condemning decorating a specific kind of tree? No. Is God condemning decorating trees in general? No. Is God condemning bringing a tree into your home? No. Is God condemning decorating a tree in your home? No. What is God condemning? Making an idol, bowing down, worshiping, adorning with precious ornaments, silver and gold, to speak to its divinity and its spirituality and how it's the one over the signs in the heavens. The practice here of the people of the nations is a reflection of where their heart is at, what they believe. Lifestyle indicates belief system. So their practice here is a reflection of a deeper heart issue. They are doing these things with a heart of rebellion, rejection of the true and living God, with a heart of idolatry. That's the heart of this issue. So the questions follow up become, can we cut down trees without a rebellious, idolatrous heart? People do it all the time. Yes, you can do that unto God's glory. You can use what God has provided for fire, for building, for homes. Can I bring a tree or a plant in my home without having a rebellious, idolatrous heart in that practice? Sure. Can I do that in a way that honors God and glorifies Him? Is that a redeemable practice? Sure. People do that all the time. Can I decorate something, including a tree in my own house, and put gifts under the tree for other people, without having a rebellious, idolatrous heart? Yes. Can I do these things in a way that honors and glorifies God and dedicating those things to Him? Yes, there are 3 categories in life. There are things you should receive, number 1. There are things you should reject, number 2. And there are things you should redeem. So let's reflect for a minute. If pagans do certain things in dedication to their false god and in dedication to their idols with rebellious and idolatrous hearts, does that mean that I take on their pagan heart and their pagan thinking when I do the same activities they do? If we listed out on paper all the things we do on a daily basis that a pagan unbeliever does, you'd be very surprised. So is that practice in and of itself the issue, or is the heart the issue? Is my own heart and mind my own? Absolutely. Just because someone else does something with an eye towards idolatry and rebellion doesn't mean I have to do it with that same heart and mindset. So if pagans cut down trees and make idols out of it and then decorate it as part of their idolatry, does this mean that decorating trees is idolatry in and of itself? No. If pagans bring a piece of wood into their homes as part of their idolatry and bow down to that god, does this mean that me bringing a tree or plant into my home is inherently idolatry in and of itself? No. If pagans put gifts near their wooden idol for idolatrous purposes, in rejection of the true and living God, does this mean that putting gifts for others under a tree is inherently idolatry? No. So this isn't even about the trees or the decorations as much as it is about the reason people do these things. If you remove their pagan reasoning, if you remove their idolatrous heart from the equation, these practices in and of themselves are not inherently condemned or deemed sinful by God. So back to verse 1. Hear the word of the Lord. It seems as though these pagan nations are dismayed by the signs of the heavens. Remember how I said we need to emphasize that? They're dismayed at the signs of the heavens in the sense that they're interpreting natural signs to be omens or signs of whether or not their gods are happy or not. And we see these signs more clearly laid out again in verse 13. And this is just the story of the pagan nations, and even Israel will fall into idolatry. But you cannot use this verse to justify condemning people for bringing a tree into their home, celebrating the birth of Jesus, putting gifts under that for other people, decorating that tree. That's not the issue in mind here. This is a very different passage than most people think. So do what you will with the Christian liberties God has given you. Be mindful, be discerning. Understand that just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. So we need to prayerfully, biblically think through these things. I hope this was helpful. Hey, I just want to thank you for all your support and prayers that make this ministry possible and help us to accomplish our mission. Your support makes it possible for us to create all the free resources we have available for anyone around the world. Our mission is to teach people how to read the Bible so they can live and teach the Bible themselves. So be sure to visit abovereproachministry.com for all these free resources and to support this ministry. And if you're a new believer, be sure to check out the new believer section on the homepage of our website and grab a copy of my book, Fruitful, while you're there. God bless you guys, and as always, keep moving towards Jesus.